a webcam can create beautiful video for remote production.
Right.
We just have to understand what its limitations are and how to use that webcam.
The other day we were working with a client and they had a great webcam. They should have been in a position to record incredible content, but they didn't do the things that we asked them to do to be prepared. There's every reason in the world this should have been just a beautiful looking recording. But, kind of occurred to me that with a webcam, you can capture incredible recordings even in remote production.
Yeah.
But you have to have certain ingredients.
That's the key, is the ingredients. So yes, a webcam can create beautiful video for remote production.
Right.
We just have to understand what its limitations are and how to use that webcam, because you can ruin video even if you have a Hollywood red camera, $10,000 camera. You can still ruin the video if you don't have the right elements around it. So you have to understand, what are you shooting it for, and what environment needs to be set up to make that webcam work like it should.
But let me ask you this. Let me play devil's advocate for a second. We are in a plug and play culture, arguably. We tolerate video that isn't necessarily great production on social media. We're whipping through. We don't say, oh, nice camera, bad camera, unless you're like in the business. You're looking at the content, and sometimes you're looking at the whiz bang of the of the CapCut, TikTok-y stuff a lot of times when it's on social media, or even on LinkedIn now to some degree these days, and YouTube. But so my question I'm always asking myself is, does it matter? Why does it matter to actually capture? I mean, I know why I think it matters. And I think I know why you think it matters, but
yeah, even though we're talking about webcams here, you mentioned the quality, and overall we're talking about content creation.
Yeah.
And when you're creating content, it's the quality of what you say, the quality of what you convey, whether it be entertainment or education or knowledge sharing. It's the quality of that matters more than anything.
That's what matters.
And the higher that quality of what you convey, the more forgiving we are of the technical quality. But since we're talking about webcams, there's still a high technical quality you can get with the webcam if you know what your purpose is. And in fact, the other day something came to me was, well, look at all these webcams. We've gone through a lot of webcams over the year. We've researched a lot. We've bought dozens, and we always come back to this one particular camera, which is the Logitech C920. It is not the newest on the market. It's been out for a long time. And here's the difference. When we look at new cameras, it ends up being the best. Figure out what is the best camera for that scenario. And when it comes to the Logitech C920, I'm not trying to sell those or anything. It's just that it's the most plug and play, as you mentioned earlier, webcam for straightforward video capture.
It's a utility camera that works in a lot of scenarios.
Exactly. A lot of scenarios. And that's the key, because is it the best camera for a gamer? No. Is it the best camera for somebody who wants to load up software and tweak all the settings? No. But is it the best camera to just plug it in, like we send to our executives, to just plug it in and it works and it gives you quality video without any fiddliness, without any settings? It gives you B+A, at least, quality, given you know what to do around that to capture that kind of quality.
I think about the number of executives we've worked with that already had cameras. They may even had, quote, good cameras. They may even had decent computer setups. They thought that they were on the technical edge of like, I appreciate you guys telling us what to do, but I got this. I always take great video. And I respect why they feel that way. But they have captured video like you said, in these scenarios that they normally operate in. And for them, it might be Zoom, for example. And for that situation, maybe it works fine. For the purposes that they have, it works fine. But when we utilize a more professional recording platform, that is capable of capturing, a higher level of resolution. It captures a lot more data. There's a lot more things we can control. Their camera may not respond. It may not allow us to control those things, which means they miss out on the image control and quality that can be captured. Number one. Number two, I think back on this one instance of someone we worked with, and he had a camera that only really captured in wide angle, like fisheye,
The
basically,
fisheye.
right? And it was like at a high angle looking down. It looked more like a security camera than a professional executive level video. And this was for like a really important use for the company too.
Let me mention something about that. That's the kind of thing where, and I caution anyone when they're looking through specifications on Amazon or when they're in a store buying a camera, sometimes all these upsell specifications could be the very thing you don't need.
Right.
Like that camera, if I saw a review, the review would say it has an amazing wide angle. That's exactly what you don't need. Wide angle means it's going to be fisheye, the lines are going to be curved, your face is going to look kind of weird. It would be a feature, and someone may make a YouTube video to say this camera is better because it has a wide angle. But that is a very thing you don't need for this kind of video.
Forgive the analogy, but I think about like buying a Ferrari that goes from 0 to 60 in whatever seconds. If that is your purpose, if it's about the show of the car, if it's about engine power or speed, and all those things, maybe that's your car. But if my objective is to tow a trailer, that's not the right tool. Maybe you can do it, maybe you can't, but you're going to hurt yourself doing that because you're not using the right tool, even though you say, I have the best car. Like, it's a Ferrari. What more do you want, right? So, and on the other side of the scale, I think about people who come to the table as well, that we provide them with the right tools, and in their own mind, they feel like maybe those tools are not necessary because they are coming in with that kind of, I can see myself on the video, I've got light, I can hear you, what more do we need? Let's get going.
Well, what would be fun? Let's list out some of these extra features that some webcams provide that actually work against you. Because we talk about the C920 because it is basic. It is missing some of those extra features. So let me just list the first ones come to mind for me. One, like you said earlier, the wide angle. You don't want a wide angle.
Yeah.
Two, some cameras track where you are. But what that does is, and that's a special feature if you're a gamer or if you're trying to walk around the room and do videos, that's a great feature, but not for filming, talking head business video, because you want the framing to stay the same. Plus, those cameras have to crop in digitally to get that room to move, so you lose some quality. So that's two things right there. Then some tout, hey, we have a great microphone on your camera. Even the best webcam microphone is lousy in terms of audio quality. Maybe for a conference call, but if you're recording video for remote production, you want much higher quality. So the webcam microphone is not something you want to have. And there was something, the white balance. If it has special features of always changing focus and always changing your white balance, during a conference call, you'll probably never notice it. But if you're watching a video and we're doing remote video production for someone, we don't want the room to be a little bit blue one moment, a little bit brown the next moment, brighter or darker. That's a camera feature that's smart for the camera to adjust in the live environment. But when recording, you want it to be the same way all the time. So all those are features you're going to see people say, hey, it's great about lighting changes and it's great about tracking me. Those are features that you'll pay more for that you don't necessarily want when you're doing remote video production.
Absolutely.
If you're a marketer struggling to create content that's truly unique to your brand, here's the key. Your experts and executives are your most valuable content assets. Conversational content like videos and podcasts featuring your team stand out above all other content. So instead of creating content that sounds just like your competition, start leveraging the unique voices inside your company. Thought leaders and authentic conversations build credibility and engagement. At Content Monsta, we specialize in remote content production, meaning we coach your people to be comfortable on camera, then we capture and produce high-quality videos and podcasts featuring your team and customers. No need for expensive production crews, long production plans, or complex setups. Want to see how it works? Visit contentmonsta.com today to learn more.
Another is resolution. You know, a lot of built-in webcams may look really clear to you on your screen. But the truth is they're just not capturing as much data. And, you know, someone asked me about that the other day. They weren't really as keen on what resolution really, why it actually matters in production and the final content output. And I remind them, like, when you look at like, let's say a picture in a newspaper or something like that, from sort of far, it looks pretty good. But if you get up close to it, you can see it's made up of many dots basically. And that's very similar to, it means there's not a lot of information there to make that up. And if you were trying to manipulate that, like taking a picture that isn't very good and you blow it up, you zoom it out, it gets grainy. It's very the same thing with video images and audio information, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of, I mean, you and I know this, but just for anyone watching this or listening to this, you know, the amount of information you're taking in from some webcams may be literally less than half of the minimum amount that we really want to get from a webcam, the amount of information, the amount of data that's actually being recorded. Because if it isn't there for us to work with in post-production, in editing, we can't do anything with it. We can't manipulate the signal. We can't change the colors or the brightness as well. We can't work on what's in focus, what's not in focus,
Yeah.
and be able to do all
in
the
terms
things
of
we want to do.
specs, even 4K, all 4K is not the same. You can have a camera with, high quality 1080p resolution that is much better than a low quality 4K.
Right.
You mentioned earlier, like the number of dots, those pixels is the resolution.
Right.
But even if you have the 4K amount of pixels, the quality of each pixel matters. And the rate at which you
Good point.
capture those pixels matter. You could have 4K, but it's capturing at a slow frame rate, then you still get blurry stuff. So it's really important. All that goes into, if you're shopping for a webcam, if you're trying to understand how to use a webcam, or if your webcam you have is good enough for remote video production, it's important to know that there are a lot of nuances that you're not going to find in Amazon reviews about the seller specifications. You have to truly understand what you're using the camera for and what it's capable of.
Here's a great example of that, and that is how the webcam reacts to light, particularly low light. We actually had a situation recently where it just wasn't possible to bring enough light on the subject in the environment that they were in. And because we were using a very good camera, the camera was able to react to that well and still produce a pretty clear, pretty nice image with a lot of that data, that information that we could manipulate in post-production and improve the quality of the image. A lot of especially built-in webcams have far weaker low light performance, and it just isn't able to interpret the information it's bringing in. And because remember, any type of device is just taking in information, going through a computation, figuring out what it saw or heard, interpreting it in data, and then spitting it out on the other side. If it doesn't have enough information, it doesn't know what to do with it. It's going to make certain guesses, if you will, as to what to deliver to your computer in information, right? And so,
Yeah.
so basically, to boil it all down, better webcams such as the C920 that you mentioned, Lee, are designed to handle low light and brighter light very intelligently. And I don't think that most webcams, when they're being sold, consumer-facing webcams, are going to say, by the way, this one handles light in this way and this way. It just is talking about the clear picture that it delivers under the
Some of them
most
will say,
optimal
they'll
conditions.
say great with low light, but what they're doing is they're going to digitally enhance that low light.
Yeah.
You may end up with the grain in your picture that, again, may be good enough for a conference call,
Yeah.
because nobody's going to remember or be able to replay that, more than likely. But for video production, that fake enhanced light, which is just brightening the image it's getting, is not good video quality.
Right. Speaking of built-in webcams, by the way, I know we're sort of getting in the nitty-gritty with this, but I think it is important. Lower level webcams or even built-in webcams don't necessarily have the kinds of hardware updates even to the firmware, the programming of the webcam that will allow it to keep pace with all of the other hardware around it that it's interacting with as that changes. And as other software and programming and apps change. And when you
Well,
have
at the
a
same
much
time, though, the camera we like the most, that we use the most, is not a new camera. I think it probably came out in
right,
2016, 15 or so. It's an old camera, but it's the fact that it is solid that makes it worth it for us, because we need to send it to an executive, they plug it in and it
that's
works.
right.
Right? Now, even on my own desk, yeah, I've got some software where I can tweak it, but I just have that because one, I need to know, but at the same time, I need to know that I can turn it off, and this is a camera that can give me that quality
Mhm.
without all the tweaking. Because when we record with an executive, we don't expect them to download software, adjust the brightness, adjust this, adjust that. That is not going to work. It's just
No,
not feasible. And again, there are newer, better cameras that can do better if you do all that work. If you download their software, if you understand why you're using it, if you're understanding, am I a gamer? Am I doing remote video production? Am I doing conference calls?
right.
All those things matter, and you need to know what you're doing it for. And I wanted to mention this too. If you don't learn anything else about using a webcam for remote production, you have to learn this. It's that the camera has one main function, and that is to capture image. It is not to capture audio. It is not to provide the lighting. It is to capture image. And so if you see features that say great in dark lighting or great microphone, that is not a reason for you to buy that camera. You need it to capture the image. And the other things you operate separately to allow that camera to give you the image that you want.
Hey, and that Ferrari, if it's got the greatest stereo in the world, that means that money didn't go into the engine.
Well, let's talk about this. Let's change a bit from the camera specifics,
Yeah.
and let's talk about what are things you should do to your environment to allow that camera to capture the best possible image.
Well, the first one is the most basic, and that's lighting. Just sufficient lighting, bright enough lighting. If you're in darkness, your camera is straining to pick up the even the best camera is still working really hard to try to make more of the limited information it can get because there isn't a lot of light on the subject. How hard do you have to work with your own eyes to see something in the dark? Your eyes will adjust, but it's harder. It's doing more work. So it's the same
Well,
thing with the
I'm
camera.
glad you mentioned eyes, because our eyes operate in a way that when it's darker, our eyes open up, right? So we can get
Yep.
more light coming into them. And that camera does the same thing. And the problem with that is with a camera, since it doesn't physically open, it digitally it tries to accept more light. And what that
Right.
does is really, it doesn't really take more light. It just brings up the brightness of the video, which means more graininess. So to a layman seeing the video getting brighter, it's brightening the existing pixels. It's not getting bright pixels. It's taking dark pixels and lightening them, which means you get less quality. So the lighting, the natural lighting you get, not digital, but the real light on your face is what matters. Marketers and sales leaders, if you want to close more deals and drive real revenue growth, you need cash. And I don't mean money. I'm talking about my new book, Cash, The 4 Keys to Better Sales, Smarter Marketing, and a Supercharged Revenue Machine. It gives you a proven framework to improve the 4 areas that impact revenue the most: communication, alignment, systems, and honesty. You need a stronger sales and marketing engine, and this book will show you how to build it. Get your copy now at aleejudge.com/cash. Now, back to the content.
But also some light on the background matters too, because if
Mm.
you're very bright and the background's very dark, your camera is going to have a challenge. It's either going to pick you or the background. But if they
Well, let's think. If you had to decide between the two, light on you only or light on the background only, which one do you choose?
I vote you.
You
Because if
every
you've got a
time.
bright, the other day I had a recording where there was a picture frame in the background and it was reflecting a bright light on the ceiling that could not be turned off. And the camera is paying attention to that. And
Uh-huh.
it's going bright light over there, but I've got a bright subject here, a bright light back there, a bright subject here. So we had to adjust the framing of the webcam so that that bright light was out of frame so that it could focus on the person. And
Yeah.
then it was able to have the right light level and a very clear image.
Yeah. And in fact, because we're working with a webcam in this case, it's going to adjust its light based on the brightest thing in the room, which means that if there's a bright light, window, light, reflection on the painting behind you, if that's bright, then the camera's going to dim down and say, ooh, like you do when you're in the sun, you got to
Mhm.
dim your eyes a little bit, which means that you, the subject of the video, gets darker. So imagine if you're in a room with a bright window behind you and it adjusts so that the curtains are nice and clear because it dimmed down to see the curtains, all of a sudden now you're in a dark like a witness protection program. So you want the light on you and not the background. And the background, like I have now, can have some lighting for flavor, but that lighting is to let you know there's a background. In fact, this may
Mhm.
be kind of weird. I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm going to turn my light off of me.
Uh-oh.
Now, given some of this light that's on me is big enough where it does get onto the background,
Mhm.
but to show you how purposeful I am about having light on me and not the background, I'm going to turn off all the lights right now pointing to me.
All right. I'm ready. I don't
Now I've
see a
got
difference.
one light in the background. One light. The only light hitting my face is
Yeah.
from the computer screen in front of me.
Yeah.
If that
So
computer
we can
screen went dark, you wouldn't even see that probably. See, there's a computer screen gone.
yeah.
So the light pointing on me, there's one light right there. Ooh, the
Mhm.
camera's trying to adjust. And there's a second light, and then it's going to adjust.
Right.
But even though I'm having a higher grade camera right now that I'm using, a webcam does some of the same thing and tries to adjust. The
Mhm.
difference is if this had been a webcam, when I went into the dark, it would have digitally brightened everything up and it would have been a horribly digitized, grainy image. Whereas this camera I'm using now, which is a DSLR, it just leaves me in the dark. It doesn't mess with it. It just lets it be, which is it's a that's one of those features that your webcam you might buy says, oh, we'll lighten you even in the dark. It'll be a horrible picture though.
Now the lighting is one of the things giving the input into the camera, but something that affects that is the not just the comparison of what's a bright light and what isn't, but what is bright in the picture and is not. For example, if you are a very dark-skinned person and you are wearing a very bright color, let's say like a white
A
doctor
white jacket.
smock or whatever,
Hmm.
um, the camera is very intelligent, but it can't always say it's gonna pick one or the other. It's gonna pick if it picks your skin and your skin is dark, it needs to just like your eye, it needs to be open more. It needs to
Uh-huh.
intensify its signal to bring up your skin color. Well, what else is gonna get brighter? Your white your top, your white
Uh-huh.
jacket. And that's gonna blow out. That's gonna look not proper. It's gonna look too bright. Or it's gonna pick the jacket and then your face is gonna be too dark. Or if you're light, same thing. If I wear a black shirt and I've got a lighter face, it's the same problem. So one thing to help your webcam perform optimally is to be conscious about your skin tone or your hair color and also the things around you and what you are wearing. So if you have a bright white wall behind you and you're fair skin and you wear a black sweater,
You might
it'll
get
work,
washed out.
but you're asking for trouble. You're not getting ideal results. But if you wore a light gray top and you have, let's say, and you had lighter skin and a lighter background, your camera's going to like that because it's not as much of a contrast.
In fact, you know what? Something just happened. I don't know if it's gonna show up in the final, but bring your hands up again and then down.
Oh yeah, look, it's dimming down. See, there's brightness on my hand from the light,
Hmm.
so it's adjusting. Look what happens to even my microphone. It's a great
Yeah, so that's
example.
a great example. And what's happening is the camera's taking all the pixels in the image, and saying, what is the best average for me to lighten or darken this webcam,
That's
right?
right.
And so that's the kind of thing that we understand as producers, that we look out for when we ask what to wear or how to perform. In fact, those are things that when we come into a session, we have to look at, okay, we're thinking about things that the person being recorded probably doesn't think about. For example, we're thinking about, okay, there's a painting behind them with a big bright white vase on it, and the other one's got a reflection on it. Can we position you a little bit to get that reflection out?
Sure.
Now, you may be thinking it's because of the reflection, but we're thinking about that reflection is changing your camera. So there's a lot to it that the wizard has to understand versus the wands, right?
That's right.
Well, let's wrap up with the third part of the trifecta with this camera. So we know the camera is primary job is to capture the image.
Yeah.
We talked about the lighting. Actually, there's two more things. There's positioning and there's audio.
Oh, yeah.
So let's do audio first, then we'll do
Okay.
positioning, and then we'll wrap it up. So audio, no matter what the camera manufacturer tells you, webcams are not designed to capture and record good audio. For a conference call, it's great. I mean, cell phone audio is, you can communicate with cell phone audio. You can effectively communicate. That doesn't mean it's good audio. So the best audio you're going to get from a webcam is about cell phone quality. But if you're recording remote production video and you want to capture this video to replay as its own standalone video, we suggest having a lavalier microphone maybe attached to your computer or a separate microphone pointing at you, something separate from that webcam to make sure you're getting audio that is close to you and it is designed. There's some really great Bluetooth options now. You can connect from your chest straight to your computer or your phone, but in this case, we're talking about webcam. So from your Bluetooth to your computer, that's simple for audio. Now, the framing part, Mark. I'm going to give my one biggest pet peeve for camera framing, and then you can
All right. Let's have it.
fill it.
Let's go.
My biggest pet peeve is you should never see any of your ceiling in the shot. If your ceiling is in the picture, then your framing is horrible. That means light, ceiling, corner, anything above your head, you should never see a ceiling.
And just to add on to that, if you're seeing the ceiling, there is a very good chance that your angle is wrong and your camera's too low looking up at you. And the reason I bring that up, even though that may seem obvious, is photographically, people look better at exactly eye level or slightly above you looking down at you. But optimally for remote video recording, it should be eye level, looking directly at you, just like you would normally do, like in a Zoom call or an online call. You look right at the person, and that is where the angle should be. If you are looking underneath someone, you just aren't going to look as good.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why that type of angle happens so often is because, even when we do a remote recording, we have this overlay we can add that shows you a silhouette of where you should be, but that doesn't fix for the angle. Like you could be following all the rules that say center your face in the middle of the frame. It may say make sure you have this much headroom. All those things can be just right. But if that's from a low angle or a high angle, that's rarely the case. We have seen that too, high angle.
Right.
But if you're seeing the ceiling or the floor, your camera's too high or too low. The only time I could ever excuse seeing a ceiling is if you're in a long room and the room is so long that you can see the ceiling. But
That's
as
right.
you look at Mark and I right now, you're looking straight at us.
That's
The
right.
camera's neither above or below. There's no ceiling. And this goes for your conference calls too, but especially for your remote video production.
So that doesn't work for you?
No, not at all. That's a good example of what people do too. And that's, typically when it's on your laptop, it's on the table, it's too low. And we've gotten kind of used to that because of all the Zoom calls and conference calls. But you don't want to record that way. And some people are actually afraid of recording video because they've got in their mind that that's how video looks.
Also, how close you are matters too. People do not respond as well to being too close to the camera, even if it's in focus. And you also don't want to be too far away from the camera because, number one, microphone proximity, as you probably just heard, but also it just feels like you're far away. You want to fill most of the frame in terms of vertically, but not all the way to the top. So where Lee and I are positioned, you can see we've got a little room at the top and we're about chest on the bottom. That's perfect framing.
Yep. Well, yeah, let me wrap this up. We just hit some really interesting things about webcams. The bottom line is you can get some really great quality video with the webcam if you know what to do with it, if you know what kind of camera to have, if you know why you're buying that particular camera, and then you know how to add in the correct lighting, positioning, and framing audio to capture good video. So there's a bit of knowledge behind that. You can't just get any camera and get any kind of quality. Even with the camera we suggest, you need to understand how to use it and not to go buy the coolest gamer camera you see someone talking about because of their use case that doesn't match your use case.
And in a plug and play culture that we're so used to that, you don't want to lose sight. If you are a professional, if you are an executive, if you own a company, if you have been paying attention to your brand image, the quality of the content you're putting out, then paying attention to the kind of camera that you're using, the webcam you're using, and making sure that you get the best use out of it is an essential component to how your brand is reflected in the content you put out. It cannot be overlooked.
Absolutely. So Mark and I, we create and record thousands of videos for people around the world doing remote video production, and we often use a webcam. If you want to learn more about this or maybe record your executives or subject matter experts around the world, reach out to us, contentmonsta.com, and we'll be happy to help you understand better how to capture remote video content.
All right. Thanks for watching.